Hey y'all. We're going to be doing a short stream today. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Sherba Mate Talks. Um, yeah, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. We are doing our second chapter of the Satanic Verses, and we'll see if we have more to go. And here we go. So, there we go. Chapter 2. Oh, so let's do a little bit of a recap. So basically, in chapter 1, we talked about Saladin and Gabriel, and they're falling out of a plane, and it's been this really epic kind of an adventure. We saw a little bit of Gabriel's past experiences with a former love interest, and both of their different kinds of understandings of music, and they're different cultures. One is more tied to the South Asian culture, the other is tied to the more, I could say, British culture. So we're going to continue. This is chapter 2. Reincarnation was always a big topic with Jibril. For 15 years, the biggest star in the history of the Indian movies. Even before he miraculously defeated the phantom bug that everyone had begun to believe would terminate his contracts. So maybe someone should have been able to forecast. Only nobody did. That when he was up and about again, he would, so to speak, succeed where the germs had failed, and walk out of his old life forever within a week of his 40th birthday, vanishing, poof, like a trick into thin air. The first people to notice his absence were the four members of his film studio wheelchair team. Long before his illness, he had formed the habit of being transported from set to set on the great D.W. Rama lot by this group of speedy, trusted athletes. Because a man who makes up to 11 movies simultaneous needs to conserve his energies. Gilded by a complex coding system of slashes, circles, and dots, which Jibril remembered from his childhood, among the fabled lunch runners of Bombay, of which more later, the chairman zoomed him from roll to roll, delivering him as punctually and unerringly as once his father had delivered lunch. And after each take, Jibril would skip back into the chair and be navigated at high speed towards the next set to be recostumed. Made up and handled his lines, a career in the Bombay talkies. He told his loyal crew is more like a wheelchair race with 1-2 pit stops along the route. After the illness, the ghostly germ, the mystery malaise, the bug, he had returned to work, easing himself in only 7 pictures at a time. And then, just like that, he wasn't there. The wheelchair stood empty among the silenced sound stages. His absence revealed the tawdry shaming of the sets. Wheel chairman 1 to 4 made excuses for the missing star. When movie executives descended upon them in wrath, gee, he must be sick. He's always been famous for his punctual. No, why to criticize Maharaj? Great artists must from time to time be permitted their temperament, nah? And for their protestations, they became the first casualties of Farishta's unexplained "Hey, presto!" being fired. 4, 3, 2, 1. Ekdum Jaldi ejected from studio gates so that a wheelchair lay abandoned and gathering dust beneath the painted cocoa palms around a sawdust beach. Where was Jibril? Movie producers, left in 7 lurches, panicked expensively. See there at the Wilmington Club, golf links, only 9 holes nowadays. Skyscrapers having sprouted out of the other 9 like giant weeds. Or let's say like tombstones, marking the sites where the torn corpse of the old city lay. There, right there, upper echelon executives, missing the simplest putts and looking above tufts of anguished hair, torn from senior heads, wafting down from high-level windows. The agitation of the producers was easy to understand, because in those days of declining audiences and the creation of historical soap operas and contemporary crusading housewives by the television network, there was but a single name, which, when set above a picture's tide, could still offer a surefire cent% guarantee of an ultra hit, a smashation, and the owner of said name had departed up, down, or sideways, but certainly and unarguably vamoosed. Let's see what folks are saying. Okay, thank you, NetTube user. Part 2. So we're gonna go through the entire book, and hopefully every Friday we're gonna keep chipping away, because we've got, like it says here, it's 24 hours and 31 minutes left of this book. So we've got a lot of time to get through it. All over the city, after telephones, motorcyclists, cops, frogmen, and trawlers dragging the harbor for his body had labored mightily, but to no avail. Epitaphs began to be spoken in memory of the darkened star. On one of Rama's studio's 7 important stages, Miss Pimple Billamoria, the latest chili and spices bombshell. She's no flipperty gipperty mamselle, but a Worcester get lost sir bundle of dynamite, clad in temple dancer veiled undress and positioned beneath writhing cardboard representations of copulating tantric figures from the Chandela period, and perceiving that her major scene was not to be, her big break lay in pieces, offered up a spiteful farewell before an audience of sound recordists and electricians smoking their cynical beaties, attended by a dumbly distressed ayah. All elbows, Pimple attempted scorn. God, what a stroke of luck! For Peter's sake, she said. I mean, today it was the love scene. Chee. I was just dying inside, thinking how to go near to that fat mouth with his breath of rotting cockroach dung. Bell-heavy anklets jingled as she stamped. Damn good for him the movies don't smell, or he wouldn't get one job as a leper even. Here Pimple's soliloquy climaxed in such a torrent of obscenities that the beady smoker sat up for the first time and commenced animatedly to prepare Pimple's vocabulary with that of the infamous bandit queen Fulan. Davy, whose oaths could merit, who could melt rifle barrels and turn journalists' pencils to rubber in a trice. Exit Pimple, weeping, censored a scrap on a cutting room floor. Rhinestones fell from her navel as she went, mirroring her tears. In the matter of Farisha's halitosis, she was not, however, altogether wrong. If anything, she had a little understated the case. Jabril's exhalations, those ochre clouds of sulphur and brimstone, had always given him, when taken together with his pronounced widow's peak and crow-black hair, an air more saturnine than hallowed. In spite of his archangelic name, it was said after he disappeared that he ought to have been easy to find. All it took was a halfway decent nose, and 1 week after he took off, an exit more tragic than Pimple Billamoria's did much to intensify the devilish odor that was beginning to attach itself to that for so long sweet-smelling name. You could say that he had stepped out of the screen into the world and in life, unlike the cinema. People know it if you stink. So what we've seen so far is there's a lot of imagery here, and it's talking a little bit about the Bollywood scene, and it really what basically is being stated here is that Gabriel Farishta does not have a very good smell. He has an archangelic name, but not a very good smell. And his co-stars are not too fond of that. So we are creatures of the air, our roots and dreams, and clouds reborn in flight. Goodbye. The enigmatic note discovered by the police in Jibril Farishta's penthouse, located on the top floor of the Everest Villas skyscraper on Malabar Hill, the highest home in the highest building on the highest ground in the city, one of those double vista apartments from which you could look this way across the evening necklace of Marine Drive, or that way out of Scandal Park Point, and the city permitted the newspaper headlines to prolong their cacophonies. Farishta dives underground. Um, Opined Blitz in somewhat macabre fashion, while Busy Bee in the Daily preferred Jibril flies coop. Many photographs were published of the fabled residence, in which French interior decorators, bearing letters of commendation from Reza Pahlavi for the work they had done at Persepolis, had spent $1 million recreating at this exalted altitude the effect of a Bedouin tent. Another illusion unmade by his absence, Jibril strikes camp. The headlines yelled, but had he had but had he gone up or down sideways, no one knew. In the metropolis of tongues and whispers, not even the sharpest ears heard anything reliable. But Mrs. Recha Merchant, reading all the papers, listening to all the radio broadcasts, staying glued to the Darshan TV programs, gleaned something from Farisha's message, heard a note that eluded everyone else's, and took her 2 daughters and 1 son for a walk on the roof of her high-rise home. Its name was Everest Villas. His neighbor, as a matter of fact, from the apartment directly beneath his own, his neighbor and his friend. Why should I say any more? Of course, the scandal-pointed malice magazines of the city filled their columns with hint, innuendo, and nudge, but there's no reason for sinking to their level. Why tarnish her reputation now? Who was she? Rich? Certainly. But then Everest Villas was not exactly a tenement in Korla, eh? Married, yes, sir, 13 years with a husband, big in ball bearings, independent, her carpet and antique showrooms thriving at their prime Kolaba sites. She called her carpets Kaleems, and the ancient artifacts were anti-cues. Yes, and she was beautiful, beautiful in the hard, glossy manner of those rarefied occupants of the city sky homes, her bone skin posture all bearing witness to her long divorce from the impoverished, heavy, punctulating earth. Everyone agreed she had a strong personality, drank like a fish from Lalique crystal, and hung her hat shameless on the Chola Nataraj, and knew what she wanted and how to get it fast. The husband was a mouse with money and a good squash wrist. Reka Merchant read Jibril Farishta's farewell note in newspapers, wrote a letter of her own, gathered her children, summoned the elevator, and rose heavenward one story to meet her chosen fate. Okay, so let's look at what we have here. We have a little break. Came for Satan, stayed for the devilish order. Let's see. Is it me or is this poor writing that has lots of words saying very little? Um, oh no, it's Andy. He's a very flowery writer. It does seem like we have not covered much content. We've got a lot of descriptive stuff. We've described a lot of things, but we haven't really gone, you know, anywhere really. We're on page 14. They've fallen out of the plane, and now we're talking about this woman, Reka Merchant, who seems to have been a romantic partner of Gabriel Farishta, and she had 3 kids with the person she was not interested in. That's pretty much what we know after 14 pages. So it's and we've heard a lot about the Bollywood scenes and the filming, and it seems like Gabriel Farishta went into retirement around 40 years old. Um, wow, it's funny to think of 40 as being old, but I guess if you're doing that work, it can be a little bit intense. Let's see what else we have before we go back in. Steve's Creepy Van says, this is romanticism from a time where people needed something to distract them from the ever-looming possibility of terrible death. It's pretty, yeah, maybe Bollywood is, but reading this text, I think, requires a lot of work and effort. It is definitely, I understand why a lot of people have not read this book, because it requires a lot of patience and you have to penetrate through all of this flowery language. There's a lot of flowery language here. And it's very terse and it's difficult to penetrate, you know? So it's funny, a lot of it's really hype more than content so far. We're only at page 14 though, out of like 500 pages, so we'll see. Huh. Hey, it's Rubik's. Let's continue. And feel free to comment in the chat and we'll keep going. Where are we? Many years ago, her letter read, I married out of cowardice. Now finally I'm doing something brave. She left a newspaper on her bed with Jabril's message circled in red and heavily underscored. 3 harsh lines, one of them ripping the page in fury. So naturally, the bitch journals went to town, and it was all Lovely's love-lorn leap, and broken-hearted beauty takes last dive. But perhaps she too had the rebirth bug, and Jabril, not understanding the terrible power of metaphor, had recommended flight. To be born again, first you have to. And she was a creature of the sky. She drank Lalique champagne. She lived on Everest, and one of her fellow Olympians had flown. And if he could, then she too would be winged and rooted in dreams. She didn't make it. The Lala, who was employed as the gatekeeper of the Everest Villas compound, offered the world his blunt testimony. I was walking here in the compound only when there came a thud, a throp. I turned. It was the body of the oldest daughter. Her skull was completely crushed. I looked up and saw the boy falling, and after him the younger girl. What to say? They almost stood. I put my hand on my mouth and came to them. The young girl was whining softly. Then I looked up a further time, and the Begum was coming. Her sari was floating out like a big balloon, and all her hair was loose. I took my eyes away from her because she was falling, and it was not respectful to look up inside her clothes. So a Begum is like a lady. It's a South Asian word for that. So it looks like basically what happened is, when Reika heard that he's wanted to retire and he's disappearing, looks like she took her life and the kids' lives went along with it. That's what we see here. So okay. Reika and her children fell from Everest. No survivors. The whisperers blamed Jibril. Let's leave it at that for the moment. Oh, don't forget, he saw her after she died. He saw her several times. It was a long time before people understood how sick the great man was. Jibril, the star, Jibril who vanquished the nameless ailment, Jibril who feared sleep. Let's see, do we have any comments here? Yes, I hear you. It's interesting types of literature. What? Who is the Yeti? Not sure there's a Yeti there. It might be because I come from a completely different society as very white, unfortunately Christian background, and I also detest flowery writing. It's a kind of Shakespearean. He's very British. He's a very British writer. That's what the vibe is. With the complete flavoring of masala. There's a very great masala flavoring here. After he departed, the ubiquitous images of his face began to rot. On the gigantic, luridly colored hoardings from which he had watched over the populace, his lazy eyelids started flaking and crumbling, drooping further and further until his irises looked like two moons, sliced by clouds, or by the soft knives of his long lashes. Finally, the eyelids fell off, giving a wild, bulging look to his painted eyes. Outside the picture palaces of Bombay, mammoth cardboard effigies of Jibril were seen to decay and list, dangling limply on their sustaining scaffolds. They lost arms, withered, snapped at the neck. His portraits on the covers of the movie magazines acquired the pallor of death, a nullity about the eye, a hollowness. At last his images simply faded off the printed page, so that the shiny covers of Celebrity and Society and Illustrated Weekly went blank at the bookstalls, and their publishers fired the printers and blamed the quality of the ink. Even on the silver screen itself, high above his worshippers in the dark, that supposedly immortal physiognomy began to putrefy, blister, and bleach. Projectors jammed unaccountably every time he passed through the gate. His films ground to a halt, and the lamp heat of the malfunctioning projectors burned his celluloid memory away. A star-gone supernova, with the consuming fire spreading outwards, as was fitting from his lips. Let's see, how much longer is this chapter? Oh my god. We might have to split this because it's pretty heavy. Boy, okay. Yeah, we might have to split this chapter because it is long. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. It's very, very Shakespearean. I think in the future we're going to have the StreamYard available if any of y'all want to read this, but with me. But it's heavy. It's very, very thick reading. We're going to do a couple pages, I think, because it's pretty exhausting. Because we're going to go for the 30th mark, and we'll probably just continue on from there. Um, It was the death of God, or something very like it. For had not that outsized face suspended over its devotees in the artificial cinematic night shone like that of some supernal entity that had its being at least halfway between the mortal and the divine? More than halfway. Many would have argued, for Jibril had spent the greater part of his unique career incarnating with absolute conviction the countless deities of the subcontinent in the popular genre movies known as theologicals. It was a part of the magic of his persona that he succeeded in crossing religious boundaries without giving offense. Blue-skinned as Krishna, he danced, flute in hand, amongst the beauteous gopis and their utter heavy cows. With upturned palms serene he meditated, as Gautama, upon humanity's suffering beneath a studio rickety Bodhi tree. On those infrequent occasions when he descended from the heavens, he never went too far, playing, for example, both the grand Mughal and his famously wily minister in the classic Akhbar and Birbal. For over a decade and a half, he had represented to hundreds of millions of believers in the country in which, to this day, the human population outnumbers the divine by less than 3 to 1. The most acceptable and instantly recognizable face of the Supreme. For many of his fans, the boundary separating the performer and his roles had long ago ceased to exist. The fans, yes. How about Jibril? That face in real life reduced to life-size set amongst ordinary mortals. It stood revealed as oddly unstarry. Those low-slung eyelids could give him an exhausted look. There was too something coarse about the nose. The mouth was too well-fleshed to be strong. The ears were long-lobed like young knurled jackfruit. the most profane of faces, the most sensual of faces, in which of late had been possible to make out the seams mined by his recent near fatal illness, and yet, in spite of profanity and debilitation, this was a face inextricably mixed up with holiness, perfection, grace, God stuff. No accounting for tastes, that's all. At any rate, you'll agree that for such an actor, for any actor, many, even for Chamcha, so this is something we didn't talk about before. He's using he's using like Hindi words. Chamcha actually means spoon in Hindi. So when they kept saying Spoonie in the first chapter, it's because his name is literally Spoon. The other guy's name is Farishta, which is angel. So this is kind of what it is. Hey Lindsay, how you doing? Whew, this is heavy duty work. We're going to get through the whole book. I don't know if anybody actually did an audiobook of this because it is rough. It's rough so far. We're only on page 17 and it's rough. But it has to be done because we need to uncover. I don't think any of these people who wrote Fatawa on this actually read this book. I don't think that they read the book at all. Don't know anything about the characters because it's hard. As a person who's been in school forever, this is a very difficult and hard mission, but we're going to complete it. But most of all, for him to have a bee in his bonnet about avatars, like much metamorphosed Vishnu, was not so very surprising. Rebirth, that's God stuff too. But then again, not always. There are secular reincarnations too. Jibril Farishta had been born Ismail Najmuddin in Pune, British Pune, at the empire's fag end, long before the Pune, it's Pune, yeah, Pune, of Rajneesh, etc., Pune, Vadodara, Mumbai. Even towns can take stage names nowadays. Ismail, after the child involved in the sacrifice of Ibrahim, and Najmuddin, Star of the Faith. That's what Najmuddin means. A nudge is a Najm is a star, and Deen is faith, so Star of the Faith. He had given up quite a name when he took the angels. Afterwards, when the aircraft Boston was in the grip of the hijackers, and the passengers, fearing for their futures, were regressing into their past, Jibril confided to Salahuddin Chamcha that his choice of pseudonym had been his way of making an homage to the memory of his dead mother. My Mummiji Spoono, my one and only Mamo, because who else was it who started the whole angel business? Her personal angel. She called me Farishta, because apparently I was too damn sweet. Believe it or not, I was good as goddamn gold. Puna couldn't hold him. He was taken in his infancy to the bitch city. His first migration. His father got a job amongst the fleet-footed inspirers of future wheelchair quartets, the lunch porters of Dabawalas of Bombay, and Ismail the Farishta followed at 13 in his father's footsteps. Jibril, captive aboard AI 420, sank into unforgivable rhapsodies, fixing Chamcha with his glittering eye, explicating the mysteries of the runner's coding system, black swastika, red circle, yellow slash dot, running in his mind's eye the entire relay from the home to office desk, that improbable system by which 2,000 dabawalas delivered each day over 100,000 lunch pails. And on a bad day, Spoono, maybe 15, got mislaid. We were illiterate, mostly, but the signs were our secret tongue. Okay, I think we're going to stop there because this is exhausting. And we're at the 30-minute mark. Do y'all have any questions moving forward? Do you understand everything? Because we can cover that. And if not, we are going to stop here because it is exhausting. This book is rough. Hey, CK, how you doing? You know what? Let's read. We might read a little bit more. We'll finish page 18. We'll do that. Okay. Boston circled London. Gunmen patrolling the gangways and the lights in the passenger cabins had been switched off, but Jabril's energy illuminated the gloom on the grubby movie screen on which earlier in the journey the in-flight inevitability of Walter Matthau had stumbled lugubriously into the aerial ubiquity of Goldie Hawn. There were shadows moving projected by the nostalgia of the hostages, and the most sharply defined of them was the spindly adolescent Ismail Najmuddin, Mummy's angel in the Gandhi cap, running tiffins across the town. Tiffins are like the containers of like South Asian food. Gosh, there's so much of this language. I'm like, I don't know how like a British person of European ancestry would read this and understand any of this. Like, I don't. It's very South Asian. It seems like it's gate kept by South Asian culture. Like, if you don't understand this stuff, you're just not gonna get it. And like people from British culture, I don't know how you would understand any of this. Like just being like Najmuddin, like how would you even know what that is? I know like and a lot of it's about Bollywood, and I don't think your standard British person knows anything about that. Some might, but you'd have to be some kind of aficionado. Um, let me see. There's one thing I wanted to make sure. I think I want to confirm this. So a double walla is a lunchbox delivery service. See, there's a lot of this stuff that you're just not going to know. Skip nimbly through the shadow crowd because he was used to such conditions. Think, Spoono. Picture 30, 40 tiffins. Like I was saying before, the tiffin is like the container of the food. You'll probably know of South Asian restaurants that have that are called tiffin. You know, it's um Yeah, so it actually has multiple. I wanted to make sure I have that right. It's the multi-tiered lunchbox. That's the way I know it, but it's also could be like a light meal or snack. So, yeah. Okay, let's see. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like you come from a British culture and you don't this is like British literature when you see people say writing raving reviews, I'm like, how do you know what any of this stuff is? Like how do you know what it means? As a European, I agree that it is quite difficult to understand, but it's interesting. Yeah, it's very, very South Asian. Like that's my understanding. Like as a South Asian American, like even me, like there's a lot of stuff that is complex and it's hard for me to penetrate too. So like I have to review some of these words. Um Spoono, picture 30, 40 tiffins and long wooden tray on your head, and when the local train stops you, have maybe 1 minute to push on or off, and then running in the streets, flat out yar. Um, let's see, let me confirm that. Yar is like a friend, a buddy, or a pal. That's like when you're saying like referring to someone as a yar. With the trucks, buses, scooters, cycles, and what all? One, two, lunch, lunch. The dabas must get through. And in the monsoon is like a season in South Asia where it's like constant rain. Like recently in India, it's like it's been kind of flooding because there's so much rain. Running down the railway line, and the train broke down or waist deep in the water in some flooded street, and there were gangs, solid Baba, truly organized gangs of Daba stealers. It's a hungry city, baby. What to tell you? So somebody's stealing lunches, but we could handle them. We were everywhere, knew everything. What the thieves could escape our eyes and ears. We never went to any policia. We looked after our own. At night, father and son would return exhausted to their shack. by the airport runway at Santa Cruz, and when Ismail's mother saw him approaching, illuminated by the green, red, yellow of the departing jet planes, she would say that simply to lay eyes on him made all her dreams come true, which was the first indication that there was something peculiar about Jibril, because from the beginning it seemed he could fulfill people's most secret desires without having any idea of how he did it. His father, Najmuddin Sr., never seemed to mind that his wife had eyes only for her son, that the boy's feet received nightly pressings with a father whose went unstroked. A son is a blessing, and a blessing requires the gratitude of the blessed. Okay. West Side Girl reacts. I really dig this, and like I said in my comment, I had no idea this book was fiction. Um, yeah, there's a lot of imagery here. We've seen a lot of shifts from third person to first person. It's a bit jarring. It could be jarring from the kind of shifts and moves, but I think that's all for right now. We'll do the second part later. We're on page 19. We're at Naima Najmuddin, so we'll continue from there. Are there any last comments before we end? We're going to be meeting tonight. So today's a short stream. Pretty exhausted, but let me know what y'all think. Okay, so I'm going to end the stream then. Here we go.